The universe has a funny way of reminding the arrogant just how small they really are. For the Keltaran raiders, that reminder came as a single, lonely distress signal echoing across the void, a signal they were sure would go unanswered forever. In the dying light of a red giant star, the peaceful Velori colony of Seraphine Prime was burning. The Velori were beings of living crystal, their bodies reflecting light like prisms, their voices like wind chimes. They had never known war, never even conceived of violence beyond philosophical debate. Their civilization had blossomed on a world without predators, without conflict, without the cruel lessons that teach a species to bare its teeth. The Keltharan raiders had watched them for months before descending like a plague of locusts. They knew about the massive deposits of stellarium beneath the planet's surface, a mineral worth more than entire solar systems. They knew the Velori had no weapons, no military, no concept of combat. The Keltharan war chief, a brutal four-armed creature named Torvik, had laughed when his scouts reported the Velori didn't even have words for murder or theft. The attack was swift and merciless. 12 Keltharan dreadnoughts materialized in orbit, their hulls painted with the skulls of 100 conquered species. Within hours, cities were reduced to molten glass. The surviving Velori were herded into containment fields, their crystalline forms dim with shock and grief. They sent their distress call to the Galactic Assembly, the grand coalition of 700 worlds that had promised mutual protection. 3 days passed. No help came. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly, orbiting the neutral world of Concordia, the Council of Voices debated. The Velori distress signal played for the 47th time. The chamber was filled with representatives who had all pledged to defend one another. Yet now there were only excuses. The Draconid Empire was busy with a trade dispute. The Aquarian Collective was observing a sacred spawning season. The Hivemind Nexus calculated that a rescue mission would be a net economic loss. On and on, the hollow excuses flowed. Finally, High Counselor Brescian, an ancient being resembling twisted, moss-covered roots, raised a hand for silence. "We have exhausted our immediate options," he creaked. "The Keltharan fleet is too large. By the time any of our forces could mobilize, the Velori will be gone." Ambassador Theron, a serpentine diplomat, flared his hood in frustration. "Then we abandon them? We let the Keltharan believe they can attack anyone without consequence? What message does that send?" "What would you have us do, Theron?" rippled Counselor Vesh, a being of liquid metal. "Throw our forces into a battle we can't win. The Keltharan are experienced warriors, we are not. There is one option." The voice came from the back of the chamber. Every head turned. Junior Ambassador Ravesh of the Tentari stood at his station, his gray skin flushing dark with nerves. His species was known for observing, not acting. For him to speak unbidden was unheard of. "Speak, Ravesh," commanded the High Counselor. Ravesh's tentacles twitched as he accessed his datapad. "There is a recently admitted species. They joined only 8 cycles ago. Their world is 3 light years from Seraphine Prime, close enough for their fastest ships to arrive in under 2 days." The chamber filled with murmurs. "Name them," Brescian ordered. Ravesh hesitated, then spoke the word that would change everything. "Earth." The chamber erupted. Gasps, hisses, objections. The humans were infamous, though few had ever met one. Their reputation preceded them like a shadow. "They come from a Class 12 Deathworld," shouted Counselor Vesh. "Do you understand what that means? Class 12. Their planet actively tried to exterminate them at every turn. Predators, diseases, disasters. Everything that should have killed them only made them stronger." Ambassador Theron, however, was thoughtful. "I've read their admission reports. The humans answered every distress call they encountered on their way here. 17 of them. They saved a cargo hauler from a meteor storm, rescued survivors from a reactor breach, and retrieved a lost colony ship. They also killed 47 pirates who attacked a medical transport," Vesh countered. "Without hesitation, without mercy. They boarded the pirate vessel and eliminated every hostile in under 6 minutes." "Because the pirates were executing hostages," Theron replied calmly. The humans asked them to surrender 3 times. The pirates refused and continued killing civilians. The humans stopped them. Brescian raised his hand, and silence fell once more. The question is simple. Do we ask Earth for help, knowing what they are? Or do we let the Valori die because we are too frightened of the ones who might save them? The vote was close, but the motion passed. Ravesh was tasked with sending the message. His tentacles trembled as he composed it, a desperate diplomatic plea. He included coordinates, enemy numbers, and casualty estimates, formally requesting Earth's assistance. He sent the message and waited. The response came 17 minutes later. Just 3 sentences. Message received. UES Harbinger responding. Arrival in 38 hours. Ravesh stared, his skin paling. He checked the signature. It wasn't a diplomatic ship. It wasn't a rescue cruiser. The message was from a military vessel. Earth was sending a warship. He forwarded the reply to the council. High Counselor Brescian studied it. So it begins. The humans have made their choice. Now we will see if we have made the right one. In the darkness between stars, the UES Harbinger accelerated to speeds that would have torn most assembly ships apart. Its crew of 300 humans worked with quiet, deadly efficiency. At the helm, Captain Benjamin North studied the tactical data. His eyes had seen too much violence but had never learned to look away. His first officer, Lieutenant Okoye, approached. The crew is ready, Captain. Rules of engagement? North's expression was cold steel. The Keltherin are executing civilians. Our rules of engagement are simple. We ask them once to surrender. Once. And if they refuse? Then we remind them why humanity survived our Deathworld, North replied softly. We remind them that predators should fear the prey that learned to hunt back. The Harbinger vanished into faster-than-light travel. Behind it, the Galactic Assembly waited with a mixture of hope and dread. Ahead, the Keltherin continued their slaughter, blissfully unaware they had been noticed by something far more dangerous than any civilization they had ever preyed upon. In the detention fields, the Valori huddled in despair, their light fading. They had given up hope. They didn't know that help was coming. They didn't know that the humans had heard their plea and were bringing something the galaxy hadn't seen in living memory. The full, focused fury of a species that refused to let the innocent suffer. The Keltherin were about to learn a lesson that every predator on Earth had learned long ago. Sometimes the thing you hunt turns out to be the hunter. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content just like this. We'll see you in the next one. The bridge of the UES Harbinger hummed with controlled tension as the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Seraphine system. Captain Benjamin North stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his weathered face illuminated by the soft glow of tactical displays that painted the bridge in shades of blue and amber. Around him, his crew moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Each officer, knowing their role without needing orders, barked at them. Status report, North said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of command without raised volume. Lieutenant Okoye's fingers danced across her console, pulling up real-time data from the long-range sensors. 12 Keltherin vessels in orbit around Seraphine Prime, Captain. Configuration matches intelligence reports. 8 heavy cruisers, 3 destroyer-class ships, and 1 command dreadnought. The dreadnought is hanging in high orbit directly above the largest population center. North studied the holographic display that materialized in the center of the bridge. The Keltherin ships were arranged in a loose formation, their positions suggesting arrogance rather than tactical awareness. They weren't expecting trouble. Why would they? The Galactic Assembly had a reputation for endless debate and careful consideration, not swift military response. Life signs on the surface, North asked. Though he already suspected the answer would make his jaw tighten, Okoye's expression darkened. Approximately 2 million Valori concentrated in detention zones, another 300,000 scattered across the planet, likely in hiding. Thermal signatures indicate the Keltherin have established mining operations in 6 locations. They're working fast, Captain, stripping the planet while the population watches. Commander Isaac Wolf, the ship's tactical officer, leaned over his station with the intensity of a man who had spent 20 years studying how to break things efficiently. "Captain, I'm detecting weapons fire on the surface. Keltheran ground forces are conducting what looks like systematic sweeps of the residential districts. They're not just mining. They're hunting." North felt the familiar cold settle into his chest, the same feeling he'd experienced on Europa Station when pirates had taken hostages, the same sensation he'd felt during the Proxima incident when slavers had been caught with a cargo hold full of children. It was the moment when calculation gave way to something more primal, when the thin veneer of civilization peeled back to reveal what humans truly were beneath their diplomatic smiles and peaceful intentions. Communications. Open a channel to the Keltheran command vessel. All frequencies. I want every ship in this system to hear what I'm about to say. Ensign Park, a young woman whose steady hands belied her age, nodded and activated the communications array. "Channel open, Captain. You're broadcasting on all standard frequencies." North took one step forward, his eyes fixed on the holographic image of the Keltheran dreadnought. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost conversational, but every word carried the unmistakable edge of a promise. "Attention, Keltheran forces. This is Captain Benjamin North of the United Earth ship Harbinger. You are currently engaged in hostile military action against a protected species under Galactic Assembly law. You have murdered civilians, destroyed population centers, and are conducting illegal mining operations on sovereign territory. I am ordering you to cease all hostile actions immediately. Withdraw your ground forces and prepare to surrender your vessels for tribunal. You have 1 hour to comply." The bridge fell silent. Every crew member knew what would happen if the Keltheran refused, but protocol demanded they be given the chance. It was what separated humans from the monsters they sometimes had to fight. The difference wasn't in their capacity for violence, but in their willingness to exhaust every alternative first. The response came 3 minutes later. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the interior of the Keltheran command ship. War Chief Torvik filled the screen, his forearms crossed over a chest covered in tribal scars, his eyes glowing with contempt. Behind him, other Keltheran warriors jeered and laughed, their voices a cacophony of mockery. Torvik's voice was like grinding stone. "One ship. The mighty Galactic Assembly sends one ship to challenge the Keltheran fleet. Tell me, human, did you draw the short stick among your people? Is this a punishment detail?" More laughter echoed from the Keltheran bridge. Torvik leaned forward, his massive frame dominating the view screen. "I have conquered 47 worlds, Captain North. I have broken species that had weapons you cannot imagine. My warriors have bathed in the blood of 1,000 battles, and you arrive in one ship making demands like you have any power here." North's expression didn't change. His voice remained level, almost gentle. "War Chief Torvik, I'm going to give you some information that might help you make a better decision. My species comes from a world where 95% of all species that ever lived went extinct. We survived ice ages, supervolcano eruptions, asteroid impacts, and predators that could swallow us whole. We didn't survive because we were the strongest or the fastest. We survived because when something threatened us, we learned to think our way around it. And when thinking wasn't enough, we learned to fight better than anything that wanted us dead." Torvik's laughter boomed across the channel. "Threats from a prey species. How delightful. Tell me, human, what makes you think your single ship can stand against my fleet?" "Because," North replied softly, "you're thinking about this wrong. You see 12 ships against one and think you have the advantage. But you've made a critical error in your calculations. And what error is that?" Torvik sneered. "You're not fighting 12 ships against one," North said, and for the first time something cold flickered in his eyes. "You're trapped in this system with us." He made a subtle gesture, and Okoye cut the transmission. The view screen went dark, and North turned to his crew. "Tactical, what's our status?" Wolf's grin was predatory. "All weapon systems are online and running at optimal capacity. Railguns loaded and charged. Missile bays are hot. Point defense grid is active. Electronic warfare suite is ready to deploy. We are weapons free, Captain. Helm, bring us in at attack speed. Navigation pattern Delta 7. I want us moving fast and unpredictably." North walked back to his command chair but didn't sit. Instead, he gripped the armrests and watched as the Harbinger began its approach toward the Keltheran fleet. On the surface of Seraphine Prime, in one of the massive detention fields, a young Valori named Prisma huddled with her family unit. Her crystalline body, normally radiant with soft light, was dim with despair. She could feel the fear of thousands of her people pressing against her telepathic senses, a wave of terror that never ebbed. The Keltheran guards walked among them, occasionally selecting individuals for forced labor in the mines. Those who were too weak or too slow were simply eliminated. Prisma's parental unit, an elder named Resonance, placed a gentle appendage on her shoulder. "Do not lose hope, young one. The Assembly will send help. They must." But Prisma had felt her parental unit's true emotions beneath those words. Resonance didn't believe help was coming. None of them did anymore. Then something changed. The Keltheran guards, who had been casually brutal moments before, suddenly stiffened. They looked up at the sky, their rough voices raised in alarm. Prisma followed their gaze and saw nothing at first. Just the familiar stars and the dark shapes of the Keltheran ships in orbit. Then one of those shapes exploded. It wasn't a gradual destruction or a cinematic fireball. One moment a Keltheran heavy cruiser was hanging in orbit, and the next moment it simply ceased to exist. The explosion was silent from the ground, but Prisma felt the shockwave of disbelief ripple through the detention field. The Keltheran guards were shouting into their communication devices, their voices pitched with something Prisma had never heard from them before. Fear. A second ship exploded, then a third. Now Prisma could see movement among the orbital vessels, the Keltheran fleet breaking formation, scattering like insects when a stone is lifted. But there was something else up there, something moving between them with impossible speed. She caught glimpses of it when it passed between the stars, a dark shape, sleek and purposeful, like a blade cutting through water. The Keltheran guards abandoned their posts, running toward their landing craft in a disorganized panic. Around Prisma, the Valori began to stir, confusion mixing with cautious hope. "What is happening?" Resonance wondered aloud. Through the telepathic link they all shared, a single thought rippled across the detention field, originating from a Valori elder who had once studied the stars. Someone answered our call. Someone came. Aboard the Harbinger, Commander Wolf watched his tactical display with satisfaction. "Target 3 destroyed, Captain. That's 4 cruisers down. The remaining Keltheran ships are attempting to form a defensive perimeter around the command dreadnought. They're protecting Torvik," North observed. "Loyal to the end. Commendable but foolish. Route all power to forward shields and prepare the main cannon. Let's see how committed they are to their war chief." The Harbinger accelerated, its engines pushing the ship to speeds that made the Keltheran vessels look like they were standing still. The human warship had been built with one philosophy in mind: overwhelming firepower delivered with surgical precision. Every system, every weapon, every piece of technology had been designed by a species that understood survival meant being ready for the worst possible scenario. As the Harbinger dove toward the center of the Keltheran formation, North allowed himself a small, grim smile. The Keltheran had called humans a prey species. They were about to learn the most important lesson Earth had to teach. The deadliest predator is the one that used to be prey. The space around Seraphine Prime had transformed into a graveyard of shattered steel and broken dreams. 6 Keltheran warships drifted as lifeless hulks, their hulls torn open by weapons that struck with precision humanity had spent centuries perfecting. The remaining 6 ships clustered around War Chief Torvik's dreadnought like frightened children, seeking protection from a parent who could no longer save them. Captain Benjamin. North stood on the bridge of the Harbinger, watching the tactical display with eyes that had seen too much death but never grew comfortable with it. Each destroyed ship represented lives ended, choices made, consequences delivered. He took no joy in it, but he felt no guilt either. The Keltheran had made their decision when they chose to rain fire upon the defenseless. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the surface," Ensign Park reported, her voice tight with emotion. "It's coming from one of the detention fields. Audio only. Play it," North ordered. The bridge filled with a sound unlike anything most of the crew had ever heard. It was musical, like wind moving through crystal chimes, but beneath the beauty was unmistakable pain. The Valori were trying to communicate, their telepathic voices translated into audible frequencies that human equipment could process. "Please," the voice sang with desperate hope. "Whoever you are, whatever you are, there are children here. The Keltheran are preparing to execute the young ones before they flee. They said they will leave no witnesses. Please, if you can hear us, the children are in detention, Field 7, Northern Continent, near the collapsed meditation tower." North's jaw tightened. He turned to Commander Wolf. How many Keltheran ground forces in that area? Wolf's fingers moved rapidly across his console. Approximately 200 soldiers, heavily armed. They've set up defensive positions around the detention field. Captain, if they realize we're coming for the hostages, they'll start killing them immediately. Then we don't give them time to realize anything, North said. He opened a ship-wide channel, his voice reaching every deck, every corridor, every crew member aboard the Harbinger. This is the captain. We have civilians in immediate danger on the surface. Lieutenant Commander Reeves, launch your drop team. You have authorization for immediate hostile action. Rules of engagement. Protect the Valori at all costs. The Keltheran have made their choice. Show them what happens when they threaten children. In the deployment bay, Lieutenant Commander Jackson Reeves checked his combat armor one final time. Around him, 49 other soldiers of the Harbinger's ground assault team performed their pre-drop rituals with the calm focus of professionals who had trained for exactly this moment. They were not the largest soldiers humanity had produced, nor the strongest, but they were something more valuable. They were people who had chosen to stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. Reeves had grown up on Earth, in a city that had once been destroyed by war and rebuilt by people who refused to surrender to despair. His grandmother had survived the climate wars. His father had been a rescue worker during the pandemic years, and Reeves himself had joined the military because he understood a fundamental truth. Evil flourishes when good people do nothing. All right, listen up, Reeves called to his team as they secured themselves in the drop pods. The Valori are peaceful people who have never experienced violence. That means two things. First, they're going to be terrified of us almost as much as they're terrified of the Keltheran. Second, they're completely unprepared for what's about to happen. We go in fast, we hit hard, and we get those civilians out. The Keltheran want to be monsters today. Let's show them what real monsters look like. The drop pods launched with a series of controlled explosions, 50 armored capsules screaming through the atmosphere of Seraphine Prime like falling stars. Inside his pod, Reeves felt the familiar pressure of rapid descent, the heat building around the exterior, the anticipation that came before every combat drop. He had done this 17 times before, but it never got easier. That was good. The day it became easy was the day he would know he had lost something essential. The pods impacted in a perfect circle around Detention Field 7, their arrival timed to within microseconds of each other. The armored doors blew outward, and the human soldiers emerged into the alien landscape with weapons raised and sensors scanning for threats. Reeves took in the scene in an instant. The detention field was a massive open area, surrounded by energy barriers that hummed with power. Inside, thousands of Valori huddled together, their crystalline bodies reflecting the firelight from burning structures nearby. Around the perimeter, Keltheran soldiers were setting up execution posts, metal frames designed to hold the Valori in place while they were systematically killed. Contact, one of Reeves's soldiers called out. Multiple hostiles on the eastern perimeter. Reeves didn't hesitate. Suppression fire, create a corridor. Medical team prepared to receive civilians. Communications, tell those Valori to move to the center of the field and stay down. The battle that followed was brief and brutal. The Keltheran were experienced raiders, but they had spent decades preying on species that didn't fight back. They had grown comfortable with victims who cowered and pleaded. They were not prepared for humans who moved with tactical precision, who used cover and concealment like a second language, who struck from unexpected angles with weapons that could punch through their armor like paper. Within 4 minutes, the eastern perimeter was secure. Within 7 minutes, the human soldiers had created a safe corridor through the detention field. Reeves watched as his medical team began guiding the Valori toward the extraction point, speaking in calm voices despite the chaos around them. One young Valori, her body barely taller than Reeves's waist, stopped in front of him. Even through his helmet sensors, he could feel her fear radiating like heat. She was terrified, trembling, her light flickering erratically, but beneath the fear was something else. Curiosity. Why, she sang in that crystal chime voice. Why did you come? No one comes for us. We have nothing to offer. Reeves knelt down, making himself smaller, less threatening. He deactivated his helmet's external speakers and used the translation software to respond in a way she could understand. Because someone needed to, he said simply. Because when we heard you calling for help, we couldn't look away. That's not who we are. The young Valori stared at him for a long moment, and Reeves felt something pass between them, a connection that transcended species or culture. It was the universal language of compassion, the recognition that suffering matters, that every life has value, that the strong have a responsibility to protect the weak. Then she did something that would be replayed on news feeds across the galaxy for years to come. She reached out with a delicate crystalline appendage and touched Reeves's armored hand. Through her telepathy, amplified by physical contact, he felt what she felt. Gratitude, wonder, and the beginning of hope. Up in orbit, the remaining Keltharan ships made their final mistake. Torvik, watching his ground forces crumble, ordered a desperate attack. All ships converge on the human vessel. Overwhelm them with numbers. They cannot fight us all at once. It was the tactic that had worked for him dozens of times before. Surely one ship, no matter how advanced, could not stand against 6 warships attacking in unison. They were wrong. The Harbinger moved through space like a dancer, its AI-assisted navigation systems predicting and countering every attack vector before the Keltharan could execute their maneuvers. When the enemy ships tried to surround it, the Harbinger accelerated through the gaps in their formation. When they tried to focus fire, it deployed countermeasures that made their targeting systems malfunction. And all the while, the human warship returned, fire with weapons that had been designed by a species that understood the mathematics of destruction. Captain North watched the battle unfold with the calm detachment of someone who had long ago made peace with the necessity of violence. He did not hate the Keltharan. He pitied them. They had chosen a path that could only end one way, and now that end had arrived with the inevitability of gravity. War Chief Torvik, this is your final opportunity to surrender. North broadcast on all channels. Your ground forces are defeated. Your fleet is broken. Order your remaining ships to stand down, and I give you my word that you will be treated according to Galactic Assembly protocols. Continue fighting, and I cannot guarantee your survival. For a long moment there was silence. Then Torvik's face appeared on the view screen one last time. His forearms hung at his sides, his scarred face showing something that might have been respect or might have been resignation. I have conquered 47 worlds, Torvik said quietly. I have never surrendered. I will not start now. He cut the transmission. And North watched as the Keltharan dreadnought turned to face the Harbinger directly, committing everything to one final suicidal charge. Helm. Evasive pattern, North ordered. Tactical, disable their engines only. Even now I won't kill them if they won't force me to. But the Keltharan forced his hand. Their weapons blazed, and the Harbinger had no choice but to respond. When the battle ended moments later, the dreadnought was a drifting wreck and War Chief Torvik was gone, consumed by the fire of his own pride. On the surface of Seraphine Prime, Prisma stood with her family unit and watched as human soldiers guided thousands of Valori to safety. She had felt the battle in orbit through the distant telepathic echoes of the Keltharan as they died. She had expected to feel satisfaction or joy at the defeat of their tormentors. Instead, she felt sorrow. The humans had come to save them, but they had paid a price for that salvation. They had taken lives, ended consciousness, extinguished the light of other beings. She could sense through their emotional resonance that they carried this burden willingly, but not lightly. A human soldier approached her family unit, this one without a helmet. He was older, with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of many hard years. This was Lieutenant Commander Reeves, though Prisma did not know his name yet. You're safe now, Reeves said through his translator. We'll stay until the Assembly can send peacekeepers to help you rebuild. I'm sorry we couldn't come sooner. You came when no one else would, Resonance sang, Prisma's parental unit speaking for all of them. You risked yourselves for strangers. Why? What do you gain from this? Reeves looked out at the thousands of Valori, at the children clinging to their family units, at the ruins of what had been a peaceful civilization just days before. His expression was tired but gentle. We gain the knowledge that we did the right thing, he said softly. In a universe that can be cruel and dark, we get to be the light for a little while. That's enough. As the last of the Valori were evacuated from the detention fields, as the human medical teams began treating the wounded, as Captain North prepared to transmit his report to the Galactic Assembly, something fundamental shifted in the galaxy's understanding of humanity. They were not prey animals that had learned to fight. They were not monsters wearing civilized masks. They were something more complex and more beautiful. They were people who had suffered enough to understand suffering, who had been hunted enough to despise hunters, who had survived enough darkness to appreciate the light.